Hello, fellow splitting geniuses. Welcome to another episode of Splitting Smart, where Heather and I have candid and informative discussions with divorce and well-being professionals. So our goal is to provide you with knowledge on various modalities of support that can help you unhitch with fewer hitches. After all, knowledge is the antidote to fear. Today's topic is one of the biggest fear triggers during your split, anyone's split, as all sense of financial reality seem to disappear while you are in a sense of heightened emotion. So knowing what you can do to prepare and finding the right person to help support you with your finances is sometimes all you need just to get back on track. And I am Lila Aiken Ali, a divorce coach, and the founder of Split FYI.
And I'm Heather Steer, a divorcee, a CDFA divorce coach, and the other co-founder of Split FYI. Before we introduce our next guest, I wanted to highlight some webinar protocols. So if you have any questions for our guest, you're welcome to put them in the message box, and we're going to be monitoring that throughout the show. Additionally, we'll leave probably 15 minutes towards the end to answer any questions that are out there as well. So without further ado, today's guest is not only my mentor and friend, but a highly trusted source when it comes to analyzing the finances in divorce. After building a successful financial management practice and seeing the need for people in transition, she became a certified divorce financial analyst and a trained mediator, and was able to build a very highly regarded mediation and financial negotiation practice for people going through separation and divorce. And seeing how powerful this option was for people going through divorce, she wanted this to be available to way more people, and her passion for teaching kicked in. And Nancy is never one to let the dust settle anywhere underneath her, as you'll see in her energy today. So she went out and built a training program for CDFAs to help them with their analytical skills, the marketing skills, sales skills, negotiating skills, the ability to work with people going through divorce, all the soft skills that go along with it. And she wanted this to be available to, as broad an audience as possible. She also is a divorcee, and her program is considered a must-do for any CDFA that wants to be the best they can be for their clients. So she's also, again, there's so much for her. I could go on and on, but she's also the author of Divorce is Not for Dummies: How to Cover Your Assets and Divorce Financial Planning. And a really fun fact, and something that Nancy and I have bonded about, is that she enjoys riding motorcycles with her husband and spending time with her children and grandchildren. Nancy, thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking me. It's actual absolute pleasure, and just to catch up with you and hear what's going on with you as well. It's great.
Yes. So, I have to say, I could not have built the practice that I built and become the resource to the people that I've been able to become without having met you, gone through your program, and been mentored by you. So yeah, thank you.
Well, I really, really appreciate that. And, it was 2014. I kind of had this vision where my business had grown to the point where we had to stop marketing because we had so much business from word of mouth that there was just no reason to market because we couldn't handle any more business anyway. And after about a year in that space, it's like a rock fell out of the sky and hit me in the head. And it was like, you can't help enough people. You need to build an army.
Right.
And that's when the training started. And that's really my mission, is to build an army around the country that is there to help people do divorce in a different way. That's more family friendly and less traumatic, and sets people up for a wonderful next phase of life instead of feeling like they just came out of a battle.
Exactly. And then also, and that they feel educated, empowered. I mean, it's exactly, what the vision that Lila and I have. And, watching you has inspired me to want to reach beyond, what my local market private practice is to do exactly what we're doing, here today for people. So I think it's just fantastic. So I think for our audience, it would be really helpful to talk a little bit about all the different things that CDFAs do. I mean, and one of the things that I spent time doing with you is, let's talk about there's a lot of different niche practices that can happen. I mean, there's people who like to do the neutral work. There's people who like to be advocates. There's people, on and on. So I think it's important for people to understand that in their, how they select a CDFA even, or understand what how a CDFA can slot in different ways.
Right, absolutely. And recognizing too, that there can be a huge range of capabilities from one CDFA to the next. Not every CDFA is going to be the right fit for every kind of an engagement that you might need them for. So that's, you thought it was complicated the first time, right? And so probably I find the biggest misunderstanding for especially women, frankly, going through divorce is making the assumption that, oh, my attorney is going to advise me on the financial matters. Yeah, no. They were trained in the law, and in general, people that are drawn to become lawyers, they're the debaters. They're the high school debaters. They are not the math kids. No. They're not the math geeks. And in fact, there's a really interesting survey that was done several years ago for family law attorneys. And 75% of them said they became attorneys because they hate math.
Yes.
So,
yes.
yeah.
They don't in law school, they don't train the numbers.
No,
I mean,
not at all.
you would have to, yeah.
So it's rare that you will find a family law attorney that does actually have financial acumen at the same time. There's actually an amazing law firm in Chicago that every family law attorney is both a CPA and a CDFA and a family law attorney. I'm like, man, I'm so hiring them if I need it.
Oh my God.
It is a powerhouse.
It is. And it's very true. There's a couple of my friends did MBA law degrees, and they're definitely better. And to your point, I definitely have surrounded myself with some attorneys that are very, very good at the numbers. But it's not their passion. To your point, their passion is the law.
So your question, let me get back to that because I kind of went down a rabbit hole there about the different kinds of reasons and engagements that you might need a CDFA for. So let's do the spectrum. Okay. So on the entry spectrum, it's extremely common that in any marriage of long duration, one of you was the household CFO and one of you was not. And I can't tell you how many women feel ashamed and stupid because they don't understand their finances. And I just want to come out really, really loudly and say neither one of those things is true, and you should not be ashamed at all. Just recognize it wasn't your job. And because it wasn't your job, you now have a learning curve that you have to make up for. So that first stage is to bring in that financial specialist just to help you make sense of everything you're looking at. And I would say that pretty much every entry-level CDFA, they can help you with that. We've got a background as a financial advisor or a CPA, and we can absolutely help you understand your own financial picture. And we also can do projections for you, simple financial planning, so that you can get an idea of what your future will look like. So I would say the entry-level CDFA, which is often the ones that haven't trained with me, like you mentioned, is the entry-level CDFA is often a financial advisor, very passionate about helping people in divorce, but really they're doing a financial plan for somebody going through divorce. Right. Not really specialized CDFA work. And not everybody needs that. So there's that place where they do fit in okay. So then move up that spectrum a little bit. And now you have maybe a pension involved. And maybe it's a public, like a firefighter or a police officer. And let me tell you, those municipal pensions get tricky. Yep. So you're going to have to be more educated in order to make sure that you're evaluating those kinds of assets correctly, looking at valuations of different assets, making sure that tax ramifications are being considered. That steps you up to kind of that next level. Then I think the next level is when there are actually specific needs in your case for a higher level of expertise. Now, probably one of the most common things we're seeing because of the cultural shift in the United States to multiple marriages in a lifetime. You've got three gorgeous young women here, and we're all at least going on our second marriages, right? So when you have somebody getting married after the age of 30 or 40, almost everybody has some level of 401k assets going into that marriage.
Right.
Separate property of any type.
Any type, correct. And
Yeah.
so then if that second marriage fails, we have to help you weed out what's separate property and what's community property. Now, this is actually kind of a borderline forensic engagement. And so unless someone has been specifically trained on how to do it, chances are your lawyer's going to tell you to get a forensic accountant. And I got news for you. We CDFAs, we can do it way cheaper than the forensic accountant because we're good at it. We do it really quickly. So that's one issue. Then the other real specialty area is if either of you works for a company where you get stock options or restricted stock units, performance stock units, all kinds of complexity that goes with those. And you really need a specialist to come in, make sure that you understand, what the law says about those, how they're treated, what's marital, what's not, and all of those different subtleties. I actually went back and got a forensic credential. So I'm a master analyst in financial forensics. So then maybe that next level that not everybody's going to go to is fraud.
Yep.
If you think your spouse has been either wasting money on non-marital purposes, typically that's going to be gambling, alcohol, other women, things like that, or hiding money or filtering money off, then a CDFA that has some forensic experience. And often these are the CDFAs that were CPAs first rather than financial advisors. They really dig that forensic. Yeah, they like that forensic stuff. So if you need any kind of a fraud search or making sure stuff's not missing, that's when we can really come in on that level. So you can kind of see it really just depends how complex your situation is as far as what kind of team you need to build around you.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's such a great explanation. And I have found, and there's business valuations out there, and those are also a specialty, but they tend to fall into that CDFA with an extra accreditation, is another one. So I have several cases where there's multiple CDFAs on a case because it'll be I'm the main person, but then I'm like, oh, I've got a business valuation issue. I'm going to call this person. And so, and it's important that your CDFA doesn't have an ego that thinks they're going to be doing everything, all things to all people.
Right.
It's just too difficult honestly, for any of us to do that and to be that.
Right. Absolutely. And of course, in your market in California, you get a lot of complicated cases, a lot of more financially complex, higher net worth divorces where these things become really, really critical. And as we all know, and one of the reasons the three of us do the work that we do, you only have one chance to get this right.
Right.
And mistakes that are made,
they're split.
They're split. Occasionally there can be a valid reason to go back but very rarely. So you need to make sure you're educated, and our divorce coach definitely can help you not make, the 6 main mistakes that women tend to make getting divorces: throwing in the towel, forgetting who the decision makers are, all those different things that often, I think that throwing in the towel is a big one. As women, I think we tend to get emotionally fatigued.
Oh my gosh.
And I've seen men do it too, where if it drags out too long, it's just so exhausting. And you get stuck in that reptilian amygdala brain and you just want to feel normal again.
You don't really want to face it. You don't want to do it anymore. I mean, your emotions are so heightened. And I know, particularly in my case, I had a particular case where I was living abroad. I'm an American citizen living in the UK. I'm a UK citizen as well. So double tax issues. I mean, there were so many things that, I didn't have a CDFA to help me through. And I was reliant on my lawyer and anybody who had any sense of finances that could sort of help me through it and just hope for the best. And it was really daunting. And that is something that it's like that planning bit, that strategy bit. It's that strategy that a lawyer really cannot give you. They're just strategizing your case. They're not strategizing what you're going to, how much, what are you going to, tax implications going to be? Is it better to have it now or later? Is it better to, all these questions that you don't think to ask yourself when you're going through it, especially if you're, not well-versed in the whole financial world, right? So it is a very daunting experience. And I say that it's one of the most important pieces of your divorce. I mean, that and your emotional stability, obviously, and your health and your emotional health, but it is the most important piece.
Oh, absolutely. And I always find it shocking when I'm working with a client and she'll forward to me an email she got from her attorney that said, how much support do you want to ask for?
And you're like,
and she's like,
why am I negotiating
those questions, the questionnaires, I was so overwhelmed. I actually had to like go into a cave because I was like, how can I even think right now? Like, what do I know? What do I know? I mean, my daughter was just born. It was like, what am I going to do? How do I know when I'm going to be able to work again? How do I know what I'm going to be? It's so many things that I couldn't even think straight, and nobody was helping me through that. And taking that emotion out. So,
and everything you're talking about is so important. And I think, honestly, divorce coaches are the most underutilized resources.
I do.
Because the women that I talk to, they're like, I don't understand what they're supposed to do for me. And so what you just articulated is so important because you are in no position to be making good, rational decisions.
Yeah.
You are stuck in that fight, flight, or freeze. Your frontal cortex has said, not really interested in functioning anymore.
Yep.
And, you have what we commonly call divorce brain, where the simplest decisions feel monumental. And a divorce coach is that person that helps you stay grounded in reality and in touch with that person that you really are inside. And it's so critical. And it's one of the hardest services to get people to take advantage of. And I think it's that scarcity thinking and that fear of I'm never going to be okay again. Half of everything I have is going to be gone. How am I going to survive? And now you're asking me to pay another person.
Right.
I got news for you. If you pay that other person, it could potentially save you tens of thousands of dollars in your settlement because
100%.
you're thinking clearly.
100%.
And
100%.
You're not using your lawyer who costs a lot more to do that, because that's, a lot of the things that we talk to in our community is abdicating responsibility to the attorney, using them for things, again, they're not trained for, back to that original discussion, they're not, financially trained, they're not emotionally trained, and a coach is, and I love therapists too. That's another important resource, but a coach really helps you on some of those tactical unlocking and helping you look forward, and that's, clearly what we've been passionate about, and why I, after doing a lot of CDFA work, became a divorce coach, because I saw the need to couple those things in my practice as I was working with a client through, the life cycle of their divorce. So
Because
I think that's,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say that, to that point, what's interesting is the CDFA work, right? So you do the due diligence, you see the situation of a person and you say, listen, it's really not conducive to you and your financial needs if you keep your house. I'm just going to take that because that's the biggest conundrum in the situation, usually tends to be the house. And even with all the evidence and the financial evidence that's laid in front of someone, the emotional bit, that's the plug-in where there's a coach going, okay, let's work through this. Let's start imagining that you're not, that where you can recreate a life, where let's start shifting your gears, right? And I think that's because there's evidence, but then there is also that work that you've got to do on yourself in order to get to that place that you feel comfortable. You're like, okay, this is the best decision for me.
Right.
Very tough.
And now with Heather and I, because Heather, you're a divorce coach as well, right?
Yeah. Lila and I actually met in the Certified
The
Divorce
CDC program. Yeah.
CDC
And that's where
program.
I met the mediator divorce coach that's on my team, as we were both in it at the same time.
Yeah.
So some of those things that you can do when you're, as a client, when you're looking for the right CDFA to add to your team, is looking at those kinds of qualifications. Number one, how much experience did they have before they got their CDFA credential? Because the prerequisite is you do have to have at least 3 years of industry experience. 3 years is not that much. So something you want to be aware of. What's their history prior to getting the credential? Second, what other divorce-specific credentials might they have to show their level of dedication to the field that we're talking about? This is kind of a broad generalization, but I find that broad generalizations exist because there's almost always an element of truth in them. If you, for instance, are looking for CDFAs in your zip code on the Institute for Divorce Financial Analyst website, one of the things that you can just kind of tell real quickly is when you go to their website, is it a divorce specific website, or is it just their standard accounting or financial advisory website?
Yep.
And maybe they have one sentence about offering divorce financial planning. Because here's the problem. A lot of financial advisors and CPAs, we all have continuing education requirements every year. And there's a great deal of professionals that get this credential just for continuing education hours and for a base of knowledge, but they're not at that level of being passionate about doing the work like we are. And you're going to get a completely different level of competence. This is where we focus our energies every day, all day, and we're always looking at ways to get better and bring more tools to our clients. And so you can kind of really see that in a person's professional profile.
100%. And it is the amount of time they are spending in this, because, you know, if you just sort of pull this tool out of the drawer every few months, you're not going to be that sharp at it.
No.
It's, you know, and you're, and being current, and particularly, you know, you end up having to learn a lot of your local or like state law also. And every state is very different on, you know, disclosure requirements, how you split assets. I mean, we're trained, but I look at some states. I happen to be in a 50-50 state. That's how we split things in California. But other states don't. They're like, it's a little bit more creative. And so that's really important to understand. And particularly with your own analytical tools. I build my tools around what California is.
Right,
So,
exactly.
Which is
that-
very
and
zealous.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've actually gotten to the point, thank you, pandemic, where we're doing, you know, virtual mediations all over the country. So one of the things that troubles me is there's still a lot of states in this country that are only doing evaluative mediation and not transformative mediation. And so for your audience, transformative mediation is when you have a neutral mediator and ideally a neutral financial. And you and your spouse are in one room and we're all working together to find the best settlement proposal for you and your family that's going to make both of you feel like, okay, yeah, we're going to be okay, right? That's transformative mediation. Evaluative mediation is when you both go get lawyers and they request all your documents. And so you start that legal process of discovery. And then maybe somebody will lob a written settlement proposal back and forth that probably is completely ridiculous. And so then they'll say, okay, we're going to go ahead and schedule a mediation. Well, that mediation is not going to look the same as what I just described. Right. It's going to be one client and their attorney in one room, the other client and their attorney in the other room. And the mediator is typically either another attorney or a retired judge that bounces back and forth. Right. And in that kind of mediation, they won't let you agree or propose anything that wouldn't be ordered in the family law court in that state.
Yep.
So that's in my world, That's not a mediated agreement. That's a negotiated agreement, and they're
Right.
not the same.
Yeah.
And that evaluative mediation, they will schedule for 8 hours. And if you're not done at 8 hours, they'll go as long as it takes, because they want you to get to the point emotionally where somebody's going to throw in the towel and say, I'm exhausted. I can't do this anymore.
Right.
Tell me where to sign. For me, I think that that's a process that is extremely harmful to the individuals that go through it. And interestingly, the ones that go through it, 75% end up back in court for post-decree matters 3, 4, 5, 6 years in the future. Because they're agreements they didn't create themselves. They kind of get ramrodded into it, right?
Right.
So there are some states that's your only option. Nobody's doing transformative mediation. So part of our goal as professionals is to start changing the way that we think about divorce and making these other options so commonplace that everyone knows you have a choice.
Right.
Because here's the beauty about transformative mediation. We'll give you legal information. We're not lawyers. We don't practice law, but we've done hundreds and hundreds of cases. And we can tell you if there's support is always a sticking point.
Mhm.
I can say, if you guys failed to meet an agreement and you ended up leaving it up to a judge, here's the range of possibilities that you might be looking at based on my experience, so that you can make informed decisions. But the beauty is, if you agree as a couple, you can do whatever you want that works for you. For example, I know Heather and I do this all the time. We make arrangements where a couple might continue to own a home jointly for a period of years. The lawyers and judges will not let you do that. They will force
order the house to be sold.
They will order the house to be sold, or one person must be able to refinance, period. It's like, well, what if we have a mom whose kids have 2 years left to high school? She can't qualify to refinance that home. And dad wants them to stay in the home for 2 years.
Right.
Guess what? In mediation, you can do that.
Yep. Mediation definitely allows for a lot more creativity.
Well, that kind of mediation that you're talking about, the transformative mediation is very different. I mean, historically, we tend to find that a lot of people who do go to mediation is because two people say, we don't want to fight, we don't want lawyers involved. At that moment of time, yes, they have those full intentions, right? They get into a mediator who sometimes aren't what you say. They aren't well versed. They don't have a law background. They don't have certain, and they are just in between. They just sit there while obviously things are being thrown, like, I want to keep the house and I want to do this. And all of a sudden it becomes this place of no return where two people are really scared, right? And that mediator can't get anywhere and is not doing anything for them.
Right.
And I think people need to understand what kind of mediation they should go, because that destroys all chances. Guess what happens then? Both of them go get their guns, basically, they're lawyers, and they all have a lawyer, and then it becomes something that they can't even talk anymore because they're angry. They use mediation sometimes as a place where they can just start throwing bombs at each other too. Right? You did this, and you, because he did this, and because that, and she did that. And that's what happened. It's not a concise and an environment that you're picturing right now. For me, I've not heard of a person that has gone through that, which is fantastic. Like, we need more of those transformational media.
Well, I'll tell you, that's 95% of what we do in my office.
Well,
and why I don't market, because the demand, people that use this method are so stinking happy that they tell everyone they know.
Right.
And so that tells me we need to be pushing this further.
Yeah.
I read a wonderful article that 90% of people don't need an adversarial system to solve these family issues. Now, 10% of people have either undiagnosed mental health issues, or they're on that spectrum of the common personality disorders, narcissism, they're high conflict personalities. They're never going to sit at a table and negotiate. No. Well, I'm sorry, then you're going to need to go get lawyers. And chances are the decisions are going to be made by a judge, because that person is never going to agree.
Right.
If that's your situation, you don't have any choice. However, you need to make sure you have all the people on your team that are going to advocate for you. right? For the other 90%, it doesn't have to be that way. And when I first started doing this work in 2012, I thought I was going to be doing mostly litigation support. And I did some, and I watched it destroy couples that had come into the process amicable. And they came out the other end hating each other. And they would read the documents that came from the other side's attorney and think that was the voice of their spouse, when it's not.
It's not. I mean, first of all, I went through this. I had to look up, and I was telling Heather this the other day. I used to have to look up some of the words in the lawyer letters because I didn't even know what they meant, right? I mean, accusations that I said, I know it didn't come out of his mouth, but it's so hurtful. It's like they're in cahoots with each other, sitting in a room, creating this letter that's being sent to me. And it was so hurtful and so awful that, it is a place of no return. When you start hearing those things and you feel those things, and you don't want to negotiate, because like you said, there are a lot of women who say, just throw in the towel because I can't take it anymore. But they really hold out, and they start almost fighting things that they just because they don't want to be a pushover. They don't want to be walked all over. So even if they don't wholly and 100% believe in it, sometimes they just keep going because they want some kind of gratification that they're not being pushed over, right? So,
right.
But I think this mediation thing, and going back to that, and I'm so interested in it, is because, and like you said, there are characters. A lot of times you find out when you go to mediation that the other party has a personality disorder, let's say, right? And it comes out in mediation itself. So the intention is good in the beginning. You go in there, then all of a sudden you realize.
Well, that's the perfect reason you need a divorce coach involved. And
Right.
We've got to talk about collaborative divorce now. But because what you just pointed out, let's face it, divorce is a highly emotional time. All of us have tendencies toward certain high conflict personality characteristics. All of us do. You can't ignore it. And when you are under this much stress, that is who is going to show up.
Right.
And so, we tell people all the time, we work with really, really wonderful people at their absolute worst.
Totally.
And that's who's going to show up in that room unless they have someone to help them manage that side of it. So with those kinds of situations, then along comes collaborative divorce. So I love the collaborative divorce model for that couple that is maybe has a little bit more tension. Maybe there is some really bad behavior that's been going on. Ultimately, a trust issue. There's a trust issue, and I want to know that someone in that room is on my team.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you need collaborative divorce. So collaborative divorce takes the mediation model, but breaks it apart a little bit so that you each have a collaboratively trained representing attorney. And their job is to make sure that you understand everything and your needs are met. Then you have a neutral financial, like Heather, like myself, CDFAs, that are going to give the financial data and information to both spouses. And our role really becomes in a collaborative divorce, and anytime we're a neutral, really, is to become educator about what's possible. What are the alternatives that you haven't even thought of? I will tell you, in almost every case I do, at one point during the process, someone will say, we can do that. And I'll say, you absolutely can do that. And sometimes it's the lawyers. They can do that. I'll be like, yeah,
they come up with creative solutions. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the other things the CDFA brings, is this experience of lots of different, particularly financial negotiation strategies. So how is it that you can move some assets, or to the house question earlier, more creatively? I mean, that's where our minds go. Like I'm a big puzzler. Like I'm always looking at, okay, we can do that over here, and this is the impact over here. And and it's where our passion is
we're a little bit private
numbers like
detective.
that.
We're a little bit mathematician and a little bit private detective.
Yes.
So lastly, though, on collaborative, so then we have the last critical players, either one neutral or one for each of you, communication coaches. And these are the people that help you keep that alligator brain under control and get you moved back up to your business solving brain and solution finding brain so we can all stay in a productive place. And I'm telling you what, man, those communication coaches are worth their weight in gold. They have saved so many cases that I have been a part of. So even for a higher conflict case,
Right.
collaborative divorce is just a powerful way. And it's become really, really popular on the coasts and even into Illinois. I know a lot's going on. Texas is coming on board strong. We need to get it more into the middle of the country as well.
I'm seeing a bit of a trend of being more collaborative with a little c, not as much with a big C, because the big C can be very expensive and take a lot longer because you're coordinating a lot more professionals. So that's just the yin to the yang on that. So sometimes you'll say, and the intention with your partner is to go through with a little c, so that you respect that you're going to pull in different resources. You both may not need, all the different advocates on your side, and depending on the children's needs and things like that. You can still be collaborative, but not have a robust of a system around you.
Yeah. Well, and let's clarify that for your viewers, because most people won't know the difference between little c and big C. The big reason that a lot of professionals don't want to do formal collaborative divorce is it requires a participation agreement. And in that participation agreement, if you fail to reach settlement, every professional that you're working with is now conflicted out and you have to go get all new professionals. And that sometimes can be something that the professionals aren't comfortable with, and more often that the clients aren't comfortable with.
Yep.
And so that's where she says, well, let's do it collaboratively and with that intention, but we're not going to sign a participation agreement so that if we end up having to go a different direction, we can.
Yeah.
And it allows you then to customize the team that you want.
Yeah. So. And that's what, like in my own divorce, we were like, oh, we're going to consciously uncouple. It's going to be great. We looked at the collaborative thing, and then both of us are like, wait a second, there's going to be some conflict there. And so we both were like, we're not signing that agreement. I mean, we're like, I don't want to start out ground zero again if we can't. And
yeah, now let me play devil's advocate there. You don't have to. So this is a common misperception too, though, because for example, typically in a collaborative process, we might deal with the property division first, then we go into the parenting plan, and then we go into any spousal support. It's not uncommon to get the property settlement just fine and child support. But when we get to spousal maintenance, everything falls apart.
Yep.
Well, we will do, there's in Arizona, it's called a Rule 69 agreement after the property division. So even if they do fail the collaborative process, that part's done. And now all they have to do is the support part. So it's not like all the work you did in collaborative is lost. You can still get some done and keeps a part then to take to trial if you want to.
If you file in with the court, for sure. Yeah,
Right.
and do your stipulations and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're starting to get towards our 45-minute mark. This always goes so fast.
I know.
So I want to circle back for a minute on where to look for these resources. So there's the Institute of Divorce Financial Analysts website. It's called IDFA. That is the organization that actually manages the accreditation. Nancy has been a major influencer in making sure that the people that are getting certified actually do have some level of financial background. They're trained. There's an exam we have to take. There's continuing education we need to do. And then the other place, and one of the things to look at is Nancy's practice is Smarter Divorce Solutions. And that's her training program. So people one of the things you can ask is, or you can always email, honestly, Nancy, and be like, hey, who did you train in my neck of the woods? Yeah. And find out, someone in your local market that has the skill set that she provides. So when
I'll tell you, you know what the easiest way right now is, Heather? What? If they've been through my training, all you have to do is Google CDFA and the city you're in, anybody in my program, they're going to come up on that first page because they actually have dedicated websites and they're blogging and they're marketing. They're going to come right at the top. So sometimes the problem with the IDFA website is it lists everyone, whether they're using the credential or not.
Well, and one other thing I would also tell people to do is if they do say they're a CDFA, go check the IDFA website for whether they're actually actively licensed and still registered, because that means they're keeping up with things as well. So,
and if you find somebody that's not on the IDFA list, but they have a website that says they're CDFA, the IDFA would greatly appreciate you emailing them and letting them know.
it's true.
Because it's a total ethics violation. So
yes, and you wouldn't want to work with someone like that.
You would not.
So, and then to reach Nancy. Nancy's in Arizona, as she mentioned, but she does do mediation work around the country. So she's always a great resource to reach out to for information as well. You obviously can reach out to myself and Lila. We're very well connected in this world too. So with that, is there any questions that we have? Lila, have you been monitoring?
I have seen no questions come through in our chat box. So I think
we're at a good wrapping up point.
I just want to say that if I had to do a divorce all over again, I would definitely be using you, Nancy. I'm going to tell you, I love this mediation. No, honestly, this transformational mediation is
amazing.
I wish that every couple would do it.
Yeah,
really.
It's amazing. And I mean, we've even had, I meet with each party individually first, and we ask questions like, is there anything you need to hear from your spouse? Is there anything you feel like you need to say to your spouse? And then I'll meet with the other one and say, she really it would mean so much to her if she heard an actual apology for whatever.
Right.
Is that anything that you would consider doing? And so I've had people hug each other after we're done. I mean, the thing that makes me happier than anything else in the world, 6 months later, one of them will contact me and say, oh my gosh, we've been able to stay friends. I never thought that would be possible. Wow. We actually go jogging together once a month.
That is so great. Wow.
Yeah,
those are the kind of stories that make me so emotional.
Goosebumps. I mean, imagine how much happier those kids are. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I mean, this is, I mean, in our world,
I think we're dealing with. Have Nancy back to have a conversation about transformative mediation. And
I think so. I think we should have another one on transformative mediation.
And the attitude that you can bring in to make that successful. Because I think there are some things that you have to dig deep and look at in yourself in order to, bring that to bear in a mediated setting. And that your spouse have to as well. And so
there's boundaries that you need to also set. And again, I think that sometimes, and like I said, you have to be with a professional that can handle that situation, because if it is, and I have heard many times, and my clients have gone through this, and it's a situation where it gets hot and heavy and it becomes like, a therapy session where let me just take out all the reasons why I'm divorcing you, rather than let's get to a point where we can start talking about what we need to talk about. And that's where we need to have the kind of mediation that is
right.
Conducive to making.
Our mediator is also a divorce coach. And one of the things we do is we give them in their one-on-ones up front, we have a publication that we give them called the 4 Skills. And it's the 4 skills so that you can show up well in your mediation.
Mm-hmm.
And
we need to have that discussion.
Yeah, it's Bill Eddy in the High Conflict Institute.
Yeah, I know.
I've read that. And so we use all of their stuff. We did get a great question in the chat box about, is there a difference between a divorce coach and a communication coach? Yes. In the collaborative process, the communication coach pretty much universally must be a certified mental health professional. So they're typically therapists, social workers, things like that. And their role, though, is not therapy. Their role is to help both of you stay focused on the right stuff, communicate strongly. So even if you have a collaborative communication coach, you may still want your own divorce coach. That's your person helping you to show up as your best self.
Yep. And we do, through the CDC program, get trained in a lot of those communication techniques and coaching.
Yes.
So that's
Absolutely.
I spend most of my time working on that.
Yeah.
There's a filter, and it goes back to those lawyer letters where you feel like you're getting attacked, and really it's statutory language, and you're like, why are they giving me these warnings? And and you're like, well, they have to. It's just a part of the process. Well, he's telling me I'm going to be charged back if I stay in the house, or if I don't go back to work. And I mean, all these, it's very, but it's statutory. It's not really.
Can I give you my favorite soundbite that I've been using for the last 10 years?
Please do.
In the late 70s, early 80s, we made a critical error in this country when we decided to use a criminal system to deal with a family issue. And no one can go through that system without feeling punished and beaten and bruised, because
like a
that's
criminal.
what the system does.
Feeling like a criminal, literally. You want that because
you're sitting on the stand, the lawyer's asking you a question, the judge is asking you questions. I am fresh off of a 3-day trial, and it is crazy. I mean, my client.
Also the language that's used in lawyer letters back and forth. It's not, you're right. You're 100% right.
It's all the language that was designed for a criminal system.
I agree.
We are not criminals. We're families with challenges. It's time for a change. It's time for divorce done differently.
I love that. I love that. Here.
Unhitch with fewer hitches.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Nancy. And then
so
we will let everyone know when we're going to come back and do more. This has been amazing.
It's been my absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And for everyone that watches this, good luck in your next phase of life. And just know that you don't have to go through it alone. There's people out here that can help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're going to stop the recording.